Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome from wherever you're joining today. My name is Susan, and I'm joined by amazing Dexibit founder Angie Judge. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Susan.
Today, we are going to be taking you through a brand new benchmark on generative engine optimization. But to begin with, I'll take you through a quick intro to Dexibit for anyone that might be new here. So if you're new to Dexibit, we do data analytics specifically for visitor attractions. This is for both cultural and commercial organizations, and our mission is to democratize data. We do that by bringing together all sorts of data from around the visitor's experience in your venue's operations. So things like footfall ticketing, CRM, point of sale, e-commerce, social web, weather, and so much more. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now to show you what that looks like in the product. So this is Dexibit. It is software as a service, and you can invite as many users as you'd like, and you can build dashboards, reports, insights, and forecasts, which you can then turn into scheduled email reports at a click of a button. And in Dexibit, we have an extensive library of visualizations. To add one to your dashboard, you can simply search for the topic you're looking for and click Add to add it in. And this is an example dashboard here, so you can see lots of different data coming together in these visualizations to get everything from very high-level data right down through to the very detailed data. So that was a quick overview of what Dexibit is, and now I'm going to hand it over to Angie with a question to kick us off. So, Angie, how do you know if your visitors are engaging with ChatGPT to plan their visit?
Oh, a good one. I think the best answer right now is to ask them. So there's a couple of examples of how you could do this. If you're already asking your visitors, how did you hear about us? I would definitely make sure that unless you've got sort of an other option to make sure that you've got ChatGPT or other AI onto that list. If you run a visitor intercept survey, or you've got the opportunity to ask a visitor more than that, or a follow-up like a net promoter score, I would see if you could add in something there to say, did you use ChatGPT or a similar AI in planning your visit today or preparing for your visit? So that's a really good way to understand that. Do keep in mind that we think that some visitors are potentially using generative AI and not knowing it. So that could be, for example, where I enter in a Google search to say, what can I do today in New York? And Google is itself using generative AI to make a recommendation at the top. I'm not going through to click on any Google results. I'm not even seeing a search page. But I am engaging with generative AI, and perhaps particularly for some older visitors, they might not know that is generative AI at work. So we can assume that any data that is self-reported like that, it might be even underestimating. For our customers that are already doing this, we are seeing a surprisingly high and exponentially growing number of visitors are self-identifying that they either heard about the attraction through ChatGPT or used this or other AI as part of their preparation. And another key sign that I would watch out for if you're not doing either of those things already is have a look at your web statistics. And if you line up your web stats and your visitation and you can see them sort of following a particular pattern and that pattern is starting to break, particularly if you're seeing like web traffic decline where that decline isn't matched in sort of negative growth for your visitation, I would say that's a pretty good indicator that you're starting to see a change in your visitors' behavior, that they're no longer coming to your website to prepare for their visit. They're potentially doing some of that work with AI. So with that all said and done, we thought we'd put some data around this and some benchmarking to see just how well your attraction is performing in generative AI. So if you're already using Dexibit, the best place to look for this is a new dashboard called Benchmarks Gen AI in your dashboard list. So you're clicking on the main dashboard icon here, and you can either search or scroll to access that. So this is a new data set that's been added to your account. If you're not seeing it, let your success manager know and they'll get it out straight out to you. And so this dashboard takes you through a whole pile of interesting insights in relation to generative AI performance for both yourselves and for the industry as a whole. And we've actually included a generative AI assessment tool so you can see your own individual results on a whole pile of things quickly and easily right at the end of this dashboard. So just to give you an idea of what this is comprised of, there is a lot of different attributes available within this data set, as we can see here. And you can also slice and dice this data set via, again, lots of different things, whether it's your particular state or city, whether it's your segment, like you're into, say, zoos or aquariums, whether it's your region in the world, and you can sort of see how everybody's performing across these different things. So how this starts off is that all of the different attributes mold into something we've called the GEO profile score. So this is an overall score and assessment of how well you're doing in the field of generative AI. And you can see for the bulk of industry that they're sitting around 47%, so nearly half, is sitting at around that average performance here. The profile score is comprised of a whole pile of different factors into it, and then it includes this rating of visibility. So how visible are you when somebody says, what can I do today in New York? How visible are you when somebody says, what should I do when I'm coming to, say, the US? How visible are you when somebody says, I'm looking at world-class zoos, which ones should I explore? And it's not just those simple prompts, it's a whole pile of very specific and personalized and individual ways that that conversation plays out with visitors, because of course they can ask AI any question that they like. And so these sorts of conversations come up in all sorts of contexts. And often these are really hyper personalized contexts. So it's, I'm coming to New York in July, I'm coming with my family, I've got 3 children, one of which has accessibility needs. These are their ages. We have interest in these particular areas. What should we do? So it's really specific, hyper personalized situations where these prompts are playing out. And so what we've done at Dexibit to create and generate this data is we've used a huge volume of test prompts to see how an individual attraction is performing in terms of visibility of all of these different areas. We've then added on some things like its family friendliness. So if we scroll down here, we can see how an attraction performs in terms of family friendliness and why the AI rates it as this. So this isn't necessarily any independent survey of family friendliness. It's how AI is perceived that family friendliness to be and how it would describe it to a potential visitor. We look at accessibility and we look at the overall visitor experience, and then the overall sentiment of which the benchmark is rated. So you can see some examples here, like the Met up in New York. The visitor experience is rated at a 4.9, so very high. The overall sentiment is also rated particularly high, and it's got a high visibility. And so that's going to all contribute to it having a very positive overall GEO profile score. So to give that a quick summation, you've essentially got 5 different attributes: accessibility, family friendliness, visitor experience, sentiment, and your visibility scores. And all 5 of those then comprise into your overall profile. So that gives you an idea of how each of those assessments rates, and then you can then look at that and slice and dice that data as you see it here. So for example, we can see that Asia Pacific attractions are actually doing the best in terms of their average rating across the region, and the Middle East lagging behind there at 4.50. So these are scores out of 10 for the GEO rating. One of the things that we believe is influencing the data here is the general sentiment of these visitors. So ChatGPT and other AI tends to train itself on publicly available information off the internet. These could be anything from your visitors' remarks on things like Reddit or Google, through to your own website content. And some of it does tend to sort of lend and bias itself towards quite emotional data. So for example, if you've got a bunch of visitors who are saying, I had the time of my life and this was an amazing experience and I've never seen anything so special before, versus perhaps somebody who might say it wasn't bad. And there might be some cultural contexts, for example, the British versus an American visitor, where we might see some bias in regions that's influencing this result. So really interesting to start digging into this. Some other things that you'll find in this data set, which is really cool, is that it actually gets into missed markets and your primary personas. So that's a really exciting area to come into. So identify sort of who are, this is not to say that it's the only avatar that is engaging with ChatGPT, or that you're missing on ChatGPT in the terms of missed market, but what is sort of one of the primary examples that you can then use to riff off to identify others, and to compare yourself to maybe your neighbors or your peers. So we identify a primary persona. So here we can see at the Met, we've got our cultural connoisseur, who's an educated solo traveler or couple looking to connect deeply with art and culture. And the archetype here is cultural icon of the museum. So likewise, we might be interested in their missed market. So this is somebody who they are not currently reaching on ChatGPT in terms of where ChatGPT would naturally start talking about the Met in a conversation with this avatar. So for example, we've got the cultural completionist here. So this is the fact that visitors with limited time can often skip the Met because they perceive the scale and the confusion of the Met with the cloisters as well. So AI doesn't always recommend the Met for single day visitors to New York for those reasons. And one of the ways that it suggests that this particular museum could overcome that limitation is by promoting sort of things that you can do in a short period of time when you're visiting, or how to have a quick visit, and things to prioritize for time-constrained travelers to try and overcome that limitation. So this is a great way to start to think about how your sort of target audiences and perhaps how to diversify some of those through how you're using AI. And one of my favorite parts is that for each of the locations, it identifies a comparative twin as well. So a venue somewhere in the world that is quite like you in many different respects, and it could be somebody you haven't really thought much about in the past. So really interesting to compare these types of things to see who they're doing well at targeting, or who they are missing to sort of build out your own ideas of what that market could look like for you. So that is a very quick introduction to this this benchmark data set. It's super exciting. There are hundreds of locations in here already. We'll be adding some more as well. A nice mixture of different types of segments and different sizes of locations from around the world. Some really interesting finding as well, and we'll be putting out some more articles on our website around things like commonly asked questions for visitors across the board. One of the super interesting things I think that's come out as a really actionable insight is that simply by adding an FAQ section to your website and really building out that FAQ section, not just for your own website visitors, but in the future for AI trawling, is a really effective way to improve the conversations that tools like ChatGPT will have with your visitors to make sure that you're having some control over what these engines are saying to your visitors, and what kind of words and terms they use to describe them.
Amazing. Thank you, Angie. I've got a question before we wrap things up, and that is what data is available from tech companies like ChatGPT on what visitors are doing?
And well, the answer is right now, not a lot. In fact, I would go as far as to say nothing. So that's one of the real limitations at the moment is that unlike Google, we are currently getting zero data out of ChatGPT to tell us what's happening. It's very much a black box. We don't know what data it's using. We don't know who's having what conversations with it. So with Google over the years, of course, particularly with Google Analytics, we can not only see what's happening in the search, but then sort of the impacts of that following through to our own website. With ChatGPT, the visitor often doesn't go through to click on your website. So you have neither of those things. You don't know what they're searching or prompting for. Um, and you can't see the after effects of that. And I think that this is only going to get worse, or better, depending on how we look at these things. In the future. Right now, I can't book a ticket on ChatGPT, so I can say I'm interested in going to the Met or I'm coming to New York or whatever the case might look like. But I'm still going to, if I say to ChatGPT, I'd like to book a ticket, it will provide me at that point with a link to the Met's website, and I'll leap off and book that ticket there if I'm going to do an advance pass. I think we'll see quite quickly that situation change. So that would be our prediction for how ChatGPT is going to change the way visitors behave. Is that quite quickly it will go to the point of the visitor actually making the ticket booking inside ChatGPT, at which point in time we won't see the visitor at all, even if they make an advance pass on any of our platforms. Hopefully, by that stage, we might start to see some data come out of the platform on what's happening within them. But until now, this is as much as we've got. So it's this data that we've generated via prompt testing to be able to establish some sort of baseline of how we're doing, how we're performing.
Thank you, Angie, for taking us through a super interesting topic, very hot topic at the moment. And thank you so much to everyone who joined today. We look forward to seeing you next month.
Thanks, Susan.